In the vast reaches of the galaxy, countless civilizations existed, each with their own strengths, cultures, and secrets. Some were advanced, while others were still finding their way in the stars. But one thing united them all. When it came to helping others, they often turned their backs. This was the case when the Tirax, a once proud and powerful race, sent out a desperate call for help. Their home planet, once a lush world full of towering forests and vibrant ecosystems, was dying. A strange disease had spread across their people, weakening their bodies and poisoning their planet. No matter how hard they tried, their scientists couldn't find a cure, and their leaders couldn't stop the destruction. Entire cities were sinking into the ground, the oceans were turning toxic, and the very air itself was becoming impossible to breathe. The Tirax were on the verge of extinction. Despite their history of war and aggressive expansion, the Tirax had nowhere to turn. The rest of the galaxy, seeing them as a threat, refused to offer assistance. They remembered the Tiraxes as a race known for their violent past, and feared they might want to dominate the galaxy once more if they were saved. The other civilizations believed the Tirax deserved their fate, dismissing their cries for help. But among all the powerful empires, one was different. The people of Earth, humans, heard the Tirax's cry and did not look away. Earth had always been a new player in the galactic community, a young civilization compared to the ancient powers that ruled the stars. Despite their limited resources and technology, humans believed in the power of compassion, unity, and second chances. They did not judge the Tiraxes by their past, but saw them for what they were now, a dying people in desperate need of help. Captain Leah Harper, a brilliant leader in the Earth Federation, had just been given one of the most important missions of her life. She had received the call from Earth's Council, asking her to lead a team to the Tirax homeworld. Their mission was simple: offer help, bring relief, and perhaps save a race from the brink of extinction. But it was not going to be easy. The Tiraxes were feared by many, and the Federation had little experience dealing with their kind. It would require careful diplomacy, strong leadership, and unwavering resolve. As Captain Harper stood on the bridge of the Federation's flagship, the Odyssey, she gazed out into the endless void of space. The decision Earth had made to offer assistance wasn't popular. Many of the galaxy's greatest empires had spoken against it. Why waste resources on a race that is only going to collapse? They had argued. The Tirax are dangerous. Helping them will only lead to more trouble. But Harper didn't believe in giving up on anyone, no matter their past. She had seen humanity's own struggles, how they had fought their way out of dark times and found strength in unity. She believed that if humanity could offer the Tirax a chance at survival, the entire galaxy would be better for it. After all, the history of Earth was not one of war and conquest, but of overcoming the impossible. If Earth could bring peace to even one race, it would send a message to the rest of the galaxy. Humanity believed in redemption. As the Odyssey sped toward the Tirax homeworld, Harper's thoughts drifted to the unknowns ahead. She knew the Tirax would not be easy to work with. They had been shaped by their history of aggression and survival, and their pride would make it difficult for them to accept help. But there was something in their plea that made her believe they still had hope. They had called out for help, not for domination. That was a small but significant sign. Upon arrival at the Tirax system, Captain Harper and her crew saw the planet for the first time. The once beautiful world had been reduced to a shell of its former self. The planet's atmosphere was clouded with thick, toxic fog. Cities that once stood tall now lay in ruin, overtaken by storms and desertification. The Tirax, once known for their towering structures and proud warships, now lived in isolation, hiding from their own failing world. As Harper's ship descended into the planet's atmosphere, she could see the damage firsthand. There was no sign of celebration or gratitude. Instead, a sense of hopelessness hung over the world. Yet, Harper knew that there was still a chance. The Tirax were not finished yet. She turned to her crew. "We are here to make a difference. We may be small in number, But we have something none of these empires can offer: the willingness to help without asking for anything in return. Let's make sure the galaxy knows what humanity stands for." With that, Captain Harper set foot on the Tirax world, ready to begin the mission that could change the course of history for both Earth and the Tirax. As the Odyssey sailed through the endless expanse of space, Captain Leah Harper stood before the large viewport, gazing at the distant Tirax homeworld. The soft hum of the ship's engines was the only sound that filled the room. Behind her, a few members of her crew busied themselves with their tasks, preparing for what would likely be one of the most challenging missions humanity had ever faced. The decision to help the Tirax had not been an easy one. For weeks, Earth's council had debated whether it was worth the risk. The Tiraxes were known throughout the galaxy for their past aggression, and many argued that they had brought this crisis upon themselves. "They're too dangerous," some said. "Why waste our resources on a race that will only turn on us?" But Leah Harper had a different perspective. She had been born into a world where humanity was learning to overcome its past mistakes, to build a future focused on cooperation, kindness, and understanding. She believed in second chances, and she believed that no one, not even the Tiraxics, was beyond help. A soft chime interrupted her thoughts, and she turned to find Commander Ethan Rogas entering the room. Rogas was Harper's second-in-command, a man she trusted implicitly. His steady presence had always helped her maintain her focus, especially in moments of doubt. "Captain," Rogas began, his voice calm, "we've just received an update from Earth's Council. There's growing concern about our mission." He paused, clearly weighing his words. "Some argue we're setting a dangerous precedent by helping them. Others worry that it will only anger the rest of the galaxy." Leah sighed, her gaze shifting from the viewport to the holographic display in front of her. It showed the Tirax planet in all its desolate beauty. She knew that Earth's decision to extend a hand to the Tirax was not popular, especially among the larger, more established galactic powers. There were empires that ruled the stars, and their ways were rooted in strength, dominance, and control. Earth, in contrast, had a history of finding peace through cooperation, even when it wasn't the easiest route. "We've been down that road before, Ethan," Leah said softly, "turning our backs on those in need. It hasn't worked. I know the Council is worried, but we can't allow fear to guide us. Helping the Tiraxes is the right thing to do." Rogas nodded, though his concern was still visible in his eyes. "I agree, Captain. But the galaxy won't see it that way. They'll see us as weak. If we're seen as the ones who help a race like the Tirax, what will that say about us?" Leah took a deep breath, the weight of the decision settling over her like a heavy cloak. She had always known this mission would be difficult, but she had never fully grasped how much pressure would come from all sides. Still, she couldn't back down now. "The galaxy has forgotten what it means to help one another," Leah said, her voice firm. "Humanity has always stood for something different. We don't fight wars for power. We fight for survival, for peace, for the greater good. If we help the Tirax, maybe others will begin to see that the old way isn't the only way." Rogas studied her for a moment, then spoke again, this time more resolutely. "You're right, Captain. If anyone can make the difference, it's us." Leah smiled, appreciating his support. "Let's make sure we don't let the Tirax down." She turned back to the viewport, her eyes narrowing as the planet grew larger. The closer they got, the more she could see the destruction that had taken root. This wasn't just a race in need of a cure for a disease. This was a world in the process of falling apart. The Tirax were an ancient civilization, but the scars of their past still lingered. They had once been feared throughout the galaxy, warriors with no equal. They had conquered and expanded, leaving little room for anything else. But now, the disease was eroding everything they had built. The Tirax were no longer a threat. They were victims of their own history. A few hours later, the Odyssey entered the Tirax system, and the ship's systems began preparing for the landing. Leah stood in the center of the command room, her crew ready for what lay ahead. They had trained for every possible scenario, from negotiation to medical assistance to dealing with hostile situations, but nothing could truly prepare them for what they were about to encounter. "Prepare for landing," Lee ordered, her voice steady despite the anxiety stirring within her. "We'll need to make contact with their leadership as soon as possible. Get their scientists, their healers, anyone who can help us understand how to save their planet." The crew worked quickly, each person moving with precision. They were all united in the mission. No one was backing down. It wasn't just about helping the T-Rex anymore. It was about sending a message to the galaxy. Humanity was willing to do what others would not. As the ship descended into the atmosphere, Leah felt a mix of anticipation and nervousness. This was it. This was the moment that could change everything for the T-Rex and for humanity. They were going to make a difference. Together, the Odyssey touched down on the T-Rex homeworld with a soft thud, sending vibrations through the crew's feet as they prepared to disembark. Captain Leah Harper stood at the front of the command room, her fingers lightly tapping the edge of the console as she looked at the barren landscape outside the ship's reinforced windows. The planet's surface was cracked and lifeless, with dust storms swirling across the horizon. The once glorious cities were now little more than ruined remnants of a bygone era. Leah had seen pictures, read reports, but nothing had prepared her for the sight of the T-Rex world in person. It was haunting, beautiful in its tragedy. "Captain, the landing zone is clear," said Commander Rojas, his voice cutting through her thoughts. "We're ready to make contact." Leah nodded. "Let's get to work." She gathered her team of experts, a group of doctors, engineers, and diplomats, all of whom had been preparing for this moment. Every one of them was nervous, but they were driven by a sense of purpose that pushed them beyond their fears. They had been chosen for this mission not just because of their skill, but because they believed in humanity's ability to make a difference. They believed in helping those who needed it the most, no matter the odds. The air outside the ship was heavy, thick with a sense of decay. The T-Rex had once been a mighty people, known for their warships and towering fortresses, but now they were mere shadows of their former selves. They had withdrawn into the few remaining strongholds, guarding what was left of their civilization. Trust was a rare thing, and Leah knew that the first few moments of contact would be crucial. As Leah and her team made their way to the planet's surface, they were met by a small delegation of T-Rex officials. They stood in silence, observing the humans as they approached. The T-Rex looked like ancient warriors, tall, their bodies covered in tough reptilian scales. Their eyes, however, were clouded with weariness and fear, a far cry from the pride and arrogance that had once defined them. One of the T-Rex stepped forward, his voice deep and grating, like the rumble of distant thunder. "You are the humans who offer help." Leah stepped forward to meet him, standing tall despite the tension in the air. "Yes," she said calmly. "We are here to offer assistance. We can help your people, and we can help your planet. But first, we need to understand what has happened. We need to know what caused this disaster." The T-Rex leader studied her carefully, his eyes narrowing. "Your offer is strange. Why would you risk so much for us? We are a dying race. You know our history. Why save us now?" Leah met his gaze without hesitation, because humanity believes that no one should be left to suffer, regardless of their past. "We want to help, not because of what you were, but because of what you are now. We believe you deserve a chance to survive." The silence that followed was thick, heavy with doubt and confusion. The T-Rex were not used to such kindness, especially not from a race like humanity. For centuries, they had relied on their power, their fearsome reputation to protect them, but now they were in need, and no one had come to their aid, until Earth. After what felt like an eternity, the T-Rex leader spoke again, his voice softer this time. Perhaps there is something left to save. We will allow you to see our greatest minds, but you must understand, our people are afraid. They do not trust outsiders." Leah nodded. "I understand. Trust is earned, not given. We will prove ourselves to you. one step at a time. The delegation led them through the ruined city, past crumbling buildings that once held the heart of T-Rex civilization. The streets were empty, and the few T-Rex they passed kept their heads down, avoiding eye contact. The people looked frail, their bodies weakened by the disease that ravaged them. At the heart of the city, they reached a large, sterile-looking building. Inside, they were met by a group of T-Rex scientists, minds that had once been some of the most brilliant in the galaxy. But now, they too looked defeated, their faces tired from years of searching for answers. "We have tried everything," one of the scientists, a T-Rex female, said quietly. "Every treatment, every cure. Nothing has worked. We are losing hope." Leah approached her, her expression full of empathy. "We won't give up on you. We'll work together, find a way to stop this. But we need your help. We need to understand what happened." The scientist hesitated, then nodded. She led them to a large display showing the progression of the disease, how it had spread, how it had affected the T-Rex. As Leah examined the data, she realized how complicated the situation was. The disease wasn't just biological. It was linked to the planet's ecosystem, to the air, the water, the soil. The T-Rex had pushed their world to its limits, and now their planet was fighting back. "This won't be easy," Leah said, looking at her team. "But it's not impossible." The T-Rex scientists looked at her, hope flickering in their eyes. Perhaps, just perhaps, this human team could be the answer they had longed for. As Leah looked around the room at the faces of her team, she knew that this was only the beginning. The journey to save the T-Rex would be long and difficult, but it was a journey worth taking, and humanity would see it through, no matter the challenges ahead. The days on the T-Rex homeworld passed in a blur. Captain Leah Harper and her team worked tirelessly, collaborating with the T-Rex scientists to understand the disease that was slowly destroying their planet. Despite the difficulties, there was a growing sense of progress. The T-Rex had welcomed their expertise, and there was a faint but real hope that the humans could make a difference. Leah sat in the main research room, her eyes scanning the vast array of data on the screen before her. The disease, which had once seemed so impenetrable, was beginning to show patterns. There were clues hidden in the T-Rex ecosystem, tiny anomalies that suggested the disease was connected to the planet's core, a core that had been gradually destabilizing over time. "We found something," said Dr. Melanie Clark, the lead scientist on the Odyssey mission. She stepped into the room, excitement in her voice. "It's not just a biological issue. It's something deeper, something embedded in the planet itself." Leah turned to look at Melanie. "Explain." Melanie pointed to a map on the screen that showed the T-Rex planet's core. "The energy readings are abnormal. The core is releasing unstable radiation, and it's leaking into the atmosphere. The T-Rex didn't just exploit their planet's resources. They've been mining too aggressively for too long. Their methods have disturbed the planet's natural balance." Leah frowned, understanding the severity of the situation. "So it's not just about curing the disease. It's about saving the entire planet." "Exactly," Melanie replied. "And that's going to be a much bigger challenge than we first realized." Leah stood up, her mind racing. She had expected a medical solution, a cure for the disease. But now it was clear that this was about far more than just fixing the T-Rex. If the planet's core was destabilizing, it could mean the end of the entire T-Rex civilization. There wasn't much time. "Can we stop it?" Leah asked, her voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. "We think so," Melanie said. "But it'll take a coordinated effort, not just from us, but from the T-Rex themselves. We'll need to help them repair the damage they've done. It's their planet. They're the only ones who can truly save it." Leah's mind turned to the T-Rex people. For generations, they had been a proud and powerful race. But now, their world was in ruins, and their once mighty civilization was on the brink of extinction. Despite everything, the T-Rexes were beginning to listen, to trust the humans who had offered them a lifeline. She made her decision. Get the team together. It's time to meet with the T-Rex leadership again. We need to present our findings. A few hours later, Leah and her team were once again standing in the heart of the T-Rex capital, facing the very leaders who had once viewed humanity with suspicion. But now, there was something different in their eyes, a glimmer of hope. Perhaps the humans were their last chance. The T-Rex leader, General Tarek, stood in front of them. His expression was serious, but his voice held a note of curiosity. "You've found something. Tell me." Leah took a deep breath. "Yes. We've discovered that the disease is not just a biological problem. It's tied to the very foundation of your planet. Your core is unstable, and it's leaking harmful radiation into the atmosphere. It's affecting your people, your wildlife, everything." General Tarek's eyes narrowed, and for a moment, Leah wondered if he would dismiss them outright. But then, to her surprise, he nodded. "I suspected as much," he said quietly. "We pushed our planet too far. We tried to extract too much from it, but we never imagined the consequences would be so severe." Leah stepped forward. "We can help, but it's not just about curing the disease. We need to stabilize your planet's core, or it will continue to get worse. The T-Rex will continue to weaken, and your world could be destroyed." The room was silent for a long time. Then, Tarak spoke again, his voice quiet but resolute. "We have caused this. It is our responsibility to fix it. We will do whatever it takes." Leah felt a surge of relief. The T-Rex were finally acknowledging the truth, and they were ready to act. This was a turning point, but there was still so much work to be done. "We'll need your help," Leah said, looking at the group of T-Rex scientists who had gathered behind Tarak. "Your knowledge of your planet's systems is invaluable. We can't do this alone." The T-Rex scientists exchanged glances, then nodded. "We'll share everything we know," one of them said. "We'll work together." For the first time since their arrival, Leah allowed herself to smile. It was a small victory, but a victory nonetheless. The road ahead would be long and difficult, but now, for the first time, there was a real chance, a real hope that the T-Rex civilization could survive. Leah knew that Earth had taken a risk in helping the T-Rex, a race with a complicated and often violent history. But humanity had chosen to step forward, to show compassion when no one else would. And now, that choice was starting to pay off. The T-Rex had their pride, but they also had a deep desire to survive. And with humanity's help, they might just make it. Leah looked out at the group of T-Rex scientists and military leaders gathered before her. This was only the beginning, but she was more confident than ever that humanity's willingness to help could change everything. The T-Rex were not accustomed to accepting help. Their civilization had been built on strength, pride, and a fierce independence that ran deep within their culture. But Leah had seen something change in them, a shift that brought new hope. It wasn't easy, but the T-Rex were beginning to understand that they could not save their world alone. The next few weeks were a blur of activity. Leah's team, alongside T-Rex scientists and engineers, worked around the clock to gather the resources they would need to stabilize the planet's core. But the task was monumental. It would take every ounce of their combined knowledge and skill. Leah stood on the edge of a vast chasm, the landscape before her stark and beautiful. The T-Rex had led her to the heart of their planet's most powerful energy source, a source that had been overexploited for centuries. Below, she could see the glowing veins of molten rock pulsing with energy. It was clear that the damage to the planet's core was worse than anyone had feared. "This is where it all began," said Dr. Melanie Clark, stepping beside her. "If we don't fix this, nothing else matters. The radiation leaking from here is what caused the disease to spread." Leah nodded, her thoughts heavy. "We can't fail. If we do, the T-Rex will be lost." As the team prepared for the most dangerous phase of the operation, General Tarak appeared. He stood tall, his eyes focused with determination. Despite the immense pressure, there was a sense of calm about him now. His people had always been warriors, but now, They were working as allies. "I wanted to thank you," Turak said quietly. "Your people have done more for us than any other civilization. You didn't turn away when everyone else did." Leah smiled, though the weight of his words stayed with her. "It's what we do. We choose to help. We believe in saving lives, not leaving them behind." Rek looked at her, a silent understanding passing between them. They had both learned something through this experience: humanity's compassion, and the Turax's capacity to change when faced with the unthinkable. As the work began, Leah's team and the Turax scientists worked in perfect harmony. They were far from the only species to reach this point, but they were the only ones willing to try. The humans brought the expertise in technology and medicine, and the Turaxes brought an intricate understanding of their planet's deep structures. Day by day, they made progress. They built devices that would channel the radiation away from the atmosphere, working with the unstable energy of the planet's core. It was delicate work, each step a calculated risk, but the dedication in the eyes of both humans and Turax pushed them forward. Tensions were high, but there was an undeniable sense of unity. The Turax, who once viewed humans as inferior, now saw them as partners. And for the humans, they had discovered a new respect for the Turax, a race that had once been their enemy, but was now a symbol of perseverance and determination. Leah spent hours by the main control console, watching as her team worked with the Turax engineers. Together, they built the necessary infrastructure to divert the dangerous radiation. It would not be an easy fix, but it was the only chance they had. As the day of the final test approached, Leah couldn't shake the feeling of unease that had settled in her stomach. She knew they were close, but there were so many unknowns. Could they truly stabilize the core in time? What if something went wrong? She met with Dr. Clark one last time before the test. "Melanie, are we sure this will work? I mean, really sure?" Dr. Clark looked at her with a serious expression. "We've done everything we can. We've modeled the risks. We've prepared for every scenario. If it fails, we'll go down fighting. But I believe it will work. We just have to trust that we've done the right thing." Leah nodded, though doubt still lingered. There was a lot riding on this moment. The Turax had placed their faith in them, and they couldn't afford to let them down. The next day, as the final phase of the operation began, Leah stood beside Turak once again. The energy around them was charged with anticipation. Both sides knew that everything depended on what would happen in the coming hours. Leah took a deep breath and turned to face the Turax leader. "Are you ready?" Turek met her gaze with a steady look. "We are ready." Together, they watched as the team initiated the procedure. The Turax engineers activated the massive machinery that would divert the radiation, while humans carefully monitored the systems. Every sensor was tuned to its highest sensitivity, every movement measured and precise. For a long, tense moment, there was nothing but the sound of the machines working and the hum of energy in the air. Then a loud beep echoed through the control room. "Readings are stable," Melanie said, her voice filled with disbelief. "It's working. We've done it." Cheers erupted from the team, and even the Turax soldiers standing nearby exchanged looks of astonishment. For the first time in ages, there was a real chance for the future. Leah turned to General Turek. "You did it. We did it." Turak's expression softened, a rare smile touching his face. "It is not just my people who owe you their lives. It is the entire galaxy." And in that moment, Leah Harper knew that humanity had made a difference. They had chosen to help when no one else had, and in doing so, they had saved an entire civilization. The relief was immediate and overwhelming. The radiation levels began to stabilize, and the deadly clouds of dust that had once shrouded the Turax skies slowly began to clear. Leah Harper stood at the edge of the city, gazing out at the changing landscape. It felt like a new dawn for the Turax, a second chance that they hadn't dared to believe in. The world around her had transformed. The once barren, red-tinted sky was now softening. the first traces of sunlight breaking through. For the first time in a long while, there was hope on this alien planet. The Tirax would survive, and humanity had been the difference. Turek, the Tirax leader, approached her, his eyes filled with gratitude. He had been a leader who had once seen their people as self-sufficient, refusing to accept help. But everything had changed now. The Tirax were different, more open, more willing to work with others. "We did it," Tirax said quietly, his voice full of emotion. "You did it. My people owe you more than words can express." Leah smiled, though she felt a weight of responsibility still upon her shoulders. "We didn't do it alone. We did it together." She glanced over at the growing crowds of Tirax citizens. They had been working non-stop since the operation was completed, rebuilding their homes and replanting their cities. The once dying world was coming back to life, bit by bit. It was a miracle, and it had only been possible because of the alliance they had forged. In the days that followed, Leah and her team continued their work, helping to restore the planet's ecosystems and refining the technology that had stabilized the core. But the true victory wasn't just in their technology or efforts. The real victory was in the changed hearts and minds of the Tirax. They were no longer isolated and proud, refusing help. They had learned the value of cooperation, the strength that came from working together. As the team set up long-term aid systems to monitor the planet's health, Leah found herself spending more and more time with the Tirax people. They had so many questions about Earth, about humanity, and Leah did her best to answer them. In turn, they taught her about their culture, their history, and their belief in survival against all odds. It was an exchange of knowledge and stories. Every day, Leah saw the Tirax people growing stronger, their hope rising like the sun over the horizon. They weren't just survivors now. They were a people who had learned to trust again. One day, as Leah walked through the bustling city, she was joined by Dr. Melanie Clark, who had been with her every step of the way. They had become close friends over the course of the mission, sharing their worries, their hopes, and their dreams for the future. "Leah, can you believe how far we've come?" Melanie asked, her voice full of amazement. Leah shook her head. "I never thought we'd be here. It was so uncertain in the beginning. But now," she paused, watching as Tirax families worked together to rebuild their homes. "Now it feels like a new beginning for everyone." Melanie smiled. "You've done something incredible. We've done something incredible. Not just for them, but for us. We've shown the galaxy that humanity doesn't turn its back on others. We're always willing to lend a hand." Leah nodded. She had never been prouder of her people than she was now. Humanity had shown the Tirax what it meant to stand together, and that was something no amount of technology could replace. Later that evening, the Tirax hosted a celebration to honor the humans who had helped them. Leah and her team stood before the crowd of Tirax, their faces shining with gratitude and hope. The Tirax had prepared a feast, and though Leah didn't understand many of the foods, she could tell it was a symbol of the bond they had formed. Tirax gave a speech, his voice steady and strong. "We were a people on the brink of extinction, but now we are a people reborn. We owe our survival to our human friends who did not turn away from us. They showed us that even in the darkest of times, there is always hope." The crowd cheered, and Leah felt a lump form in her throat. She wasn't one for speeches, but the words she wanted to say seemed to escape her. Instead, she stepped forward and simply smiled. The celebration lasted late into the night, but Leah couldn't help but think about the road ahead. The Tirax had been given a second chance, and they would need guidance in the years to come. They had made incredible strides, but they still had much to learn. And humanity would be there, standing by them, ready to help whenever they were needed. The next morning, as Leah looked out over the horizon once again, she knew that the future was bright. The Tirax had chosen to trust humanity, and in return, humanity had chosen to save them. Together, they had created something new, something strong. They had not only saved the world, but they had forged an unbreakable bond between two civilizations. Leah smiled to herself. This was just the beginning, and the galaxy was about to change forever. The days following the celebration passed by quickly. The T-Rex, with their planet now beginning to heal, had dedicated themselves to rebuilding not just their cities, but their entire way of life. Humanity's efforts had not only saved them from destruction, but had shown them a path forward, a future built on trust, unity, and shared knowledge. Leah Harper stood on a balcony, looking over the once dying world that now thrived with new energy. The air was cleaner, the ground was richer, and the sky, which had been choked by toxic clouds for so long, was a clear blue once again. It was a sight that brought tears to her eyes, though she quickly wiped them away, knowing there was still much work to be done. She was no longer the quiet scientist who had arrived here, with only a few basic plans and a lot of uncertainty. She had become a symbol of hope for the T-Rex people, a living testament to humanity's willingness to stand by those in need. But Leah knew the journey wasn't over. There was still so much to teach and to learn. The T-Rex were no longer a civilization at risk of extinction, but they were still in the process of evolving. The partnership with humanity had just begun. Beside her, Dr. Melanie Clark reviewed some final reports on a tablet, her eyes scanning the data. Leah, the radiation levels are almost back to normal. In a few months, we'll be able to plant the crops we've been testing in the soil. The ecosystem will be fully restored. Leah nodded, though her thoughts were elsewhere. It's incredible how much progress we've made, but I can't help thinking about the other civilizations out there. If we did this for the T-Rex, why not for the others? Melanie paused, looking over at her friend. You're thinking of the other planets in the galaxy, aren't you? Leah smiled faintly. I am. The T-Rex were just one example of what we can do if we work together. What if there are others out there, civilizations on the brink of destruction? What if we could do this for them too? I think that's a question we're all asking now, Melanie replied thoughtfully. But you're right. This isn't just about one planet. This is about what humanity is capable of, and the example we've set for the entire galaxy. Leah's mind raced with possibilities. Humanity had made a choice to help the T-Rex when no one else would. They had chosen to believe in the idea of cooperation, even when others dismissed it as impossible. What if that belief could be extended beyond the T-Rex? What if there were other races and planets that had been ignored or abandoned by the rest of the galaxy? She turned to face Melanie. We've shown them what's possible. We've shown them that humanity doesn't walk away from a challenge. We help when we can. Maybe we should make it our mission to seek out those in need, to offer the same kind of support we gave the T-Rex. Melanie raised an eyebrow. You're thinking big, Leah. Leah smiled. Why not? We have the resources, the knowledge, and the will. And if there's one thing I've learned from all this, it's that humanity has something no one else seems to have, a heart that refuses to turn away. We've saved a world. Why not save more? The idea was bold, perhaps even a little reckless, but it resonated deeply within her. Humanity had the power to make a real difference in the galaxy, to be a force for good in a universe that so often seemed indifferent. A voice interrupted her thoughts. Tarak, the T-Rex leader, approached with a smile, his scales shimmering in the sunlight. He had been a proud and stubborn leader, but now he was a man who had seen firsthand the difference that a helping hand could make. You've given us more than just survival, Tarak said, his voice filled with gratitude. You've given us hope. And now, we want to give back. We want to help you. Leah's eyes widened in surprise. Help us? How? The T-Rex have knowledge of the stars, of navigation and technology. We've studied the galaxy for centuries, but we've never had the resources to explore beyond our own world. But now, we do. We want to be a part of this new mission, to help you help others. Tarek's offer was more than just words. It was a promise that the T-Rex, once a civilization on the brink of extinction, were now ready to work alongside humanity to bring about change across the galaxy. Leah felt a sense of pride swelling within her chest. This was the beginning of something far greater than just saving a single world. This was the birth of a new era, one where humanity would not just survive, but thrive, and not just on Earth, but across the stars. "We accept," Leah said with a smile. "Together, we can change the galaxy." As the sun set over the Tirax capital, Leah couldn't help but feel a deep sense of peace. The path ahead would be challenging, but it was a path that would lead to something incredible. Humanity, alongside the Tiraxes, would venture into the stars, offering help and hope to those who had nowhere else to turn. In the vastness of space, humanity had found its calling, and the galaxy would never be the same again.